So Caitlin Clark's agent is also Nafisa Collier's agent, and she just said the quiet part out loud. And what do I mean by her saying the quiet part out loud? So if you guys don't know, obviously Unrivaled is meant to be a league, beside, like, people are talking about Unrivaled as like just another league to help players play in the off season. And obviously her agent is now saying players deserve a higher pay. And I will say this, the unfortunate thing about being a Caitlin Clark is the top players will never get what they're worth in any league. I've said it in the NBA. If there was no max salary, franchises would be paying LeBron James. Franchises wouldn't be paying LeBron James $100 million a year since Miami. They would have been literally paying them $100 million a year since he was in Miami. And you would also see, because there will be no salary cap and there will be no like minimum, maximum contracts and minimum amount of cap you would have to spend, you wouldn't be seeing like, let's just say, oh, there's a max contract, so Jamal Murray makes the same as LeBron. Like, you'd never see something like that if everyone was paid by their worth. You would see, without there being a max contract. The problem with Caitlin Clark is she might be worth $15 million a year individually, but the league cannot put a cap of $15 million a year on Caitlin Clark or on for max salary, because it would bankrupt the damn league. Because the teams that can afford to then pay suddenly your max contracts, maybe like a Joe Tsai would suddenly be paying Caitlin Clark $15 million. He pays Breanna $5 million. They'd be making super teams. And that's the unfortunate thing about the leagues, especially the leagues in America with the way they're ran via salary cap. So the agent of Nafisa Collier and Caitlin Clark, will Caitlin Clark ever be paid by WNBA, which is really worth to the league? I don't think that's possible. Say Kane, who also represents Fee, Arike, and a host of other prominent athletes. I will say this though, you can say that she'll never be paid, but you want to know where she can be paid, what she's worth? In endorsement deals. Yeah. Endorsement deals that, you screwed up with Nike. But in fairness, I will say, I think she's done a okay job with some other deals she signed, but the Nike deal is one of the biggest. She made her son, and whatever, I'm not even complaining about the amount of money per year, because no companies were offering her crazy amount per year. It was the 8 years. Like, if she'd even signed it for 4 years, that shoe deal, she'd be in a position to go at, to renegotiate. So she's part of a larger player body. They all need to be paying more. That's the problem is, like, we've seen, if you're going to raise the max contract, you then get Erica Wheeler making a max contract. There are players in the WNBA making max contracts that are overpaid. But then there are players in the WNBA, like a Caitlin Clark, who's making $70K and is worth at least $7 million a year. There's players like Angel Reese that are making $70K that are probably worth $1 million a year. Same with Aja Wilson, making a $200K worth about $1 million a year. Breanna Steward, around the same. Sabrina Ionescu, maybe worth $2 million a year. So there are players worth more. But obviously this is what she says, like an economist, Clark's salary, yada yada. But this is what one of the things that's kind of crazy is, she said this quote, and it's about Unrivaled and like obviously the max salary and everything. She says here, I think we're ready for a spin-off from the NBA. I just think the NBA is incentivized to make decisions that are good for the NBA, and those are not always aligned with what's good for WNBA. And so, for the sake of the league that I work in, I want women and women's basketball to be able to make clean, clear choices in their own best interest. This is sounding like what a lot of people thought Unrivaled was, what was going to happen with Unrivaled. That the goal is for Unrivaled was never to be an alternate league. The goal long term for Unrivaled is to be the league. And when you've got Nafisa Collier's agent, also Caitlin Clark's agent, basically saying, we need to split from the NBA, that's kind of a crazy one. basically saying the NBA are the reason why these are making this bad decision for the WNBA. And I would not really like I would not really think too much into this if she wasn't the agent of the person who started Unrivaled. She is the agent right now of the person who started Unrivaled, another league. She's the agent of someone who started another freaking league. And then saying basically, you know what, we need to separate from the NBA, which cannot happen because the NBA owns 42% of the WNBA. Who knows? Genuinely, who knows what she meant by that. But it sounds like she is at least suggesting the possibility of a player-led league as the actual league, not just a summertime league, which is kind of crazy in my opinion. It is kind of crazy that an agent can come out and say that, and like everyone's talking about her saying Caitlin Clark is underpaid and complaining about the Nike deal. The only thing I really took from this is she literally was out here saying basically that they need to start up their own league or they need a new league, which for me is one of easily the the craziest things. Genuinely one of the craziest things I've read an agent say ever. I actually imagine if Rich Paul came out and said, I don't like what the NBA are doing. The players need to split from the NBA. Imagine if Rich Paul said that. To be fair, of all people, it wouldn't surprise me that much if he did say it. But still, like, oh, lads, this is a weird one. Because if Caitlin Clark had any interest in this herself, by the way, she would have played Unrivaled. She's just focusing on the WNBA season where she's making 70k because that's the league she grew up playing in. That is the league that she grew up playing in. It's genuinely it's baffling. It's absolutely baffling from the perspective of her agent. And look, I'm not going to be one out there saying that she should be fired for this. I think maybe for blowing the Nike deal, but like if she's not going to, if she wasn't fired 7 months ago for blowing that Nike deal, look, obviously Caitlin's happy with the deal she's getting, and obviously she's happy with how she's being represented. Because a player can fire their agent whenever they want. So if she was not being represented properly, she could very easily do that. So, look, we can say whatever we want, but there's no, like, actual push. There's no, like, real thing, like, real meaning in the fire the agent. Like, fire the agent talks. But, like, normally saying whoever did this should be fired in the morning. That's like, colloquial for they done goofed or they messed up. Still, though, like, saying that the players might need to freaking go to a new league might be one of the biggest fuck ups I've seen from an agent. But anyway, I'll see you guys.